Hello and welcome to the Yggdrasil podcast. I am your host, Reddit Tosker. Today I have Saint Riot with me again. Thank you for coming back, Saint.
Thank you for having me again.
So, let me start off and let everyone know, not a spoiler-free podcast. I think enough time has passed for that. So we're just going to be talking about the DLC and whatever else we happen to touch on. How did you like the DLC?
I loved it. I was over the moon about it.
No, no complaints, no anything.
I wish that there had been more to the Abyssal Woods. I wish there had been more to that. I kind of, I get what they were going for, but it's a really big area to go for, like, this, vast expanse of, nothingness. I feel like you could have stuck one more thing in there, of interest, like a catacombs or a dungeon or something. There's some areas that definitely felt like they left them, like, wide open, which I don't mind so much. It like, there's like a million fly guy enemies and like a million like dogs and stuff, but like I was okay with that for the purposes of, like, showing us this big region of, everything has been, decimated after America and all that. So, like, I was cool. I get the storytelling that we're going for. And I feel like the payoffs were worth that for most parts, but there were some parts where I was kind of like, man, I wish there had been, like, one other thing here. Also, those fire giant dudes had way too much HP. But
I actually kind of like them. I don't know. It's like they're every time I saw one, it's like, ooh, another one. Great.
It's so Legend of Zelda, especially the ones you have to, like, throw the bomb into their head.
Yeah. Like... you get kind of into a zone state. It's like, all right, now I got to hit this leg. I just keep hitting the leg. Oh, it's gone down finally. All right, now let's do it again.
I wish, I wish they either, like, just one crit and that was it. Like, don't have them get back up. Or I've tried this. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I wish when you knocked them down, you could throw a pot into their big head and just,
Yes.
get rid of them that way. That would be cool.
I said the same thing. I think you kind of can, but, like, you have to, like, do it quickly after you get the riposte on them, after the critical. So, like, right after there's a small window where that basket turns back on and you can throw it in there.
I hadn't even tried that. That's a good... I'll try that next time.
Mm-hmm. That way you can do it in one sitting. So what was your favorite area? What was your favorite spot?
Oh, I know I just complained about it, but it's really hard not to pick the Abyssal Woods. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but the spell Howl of Shabriri, where, like, you yell and it raises the like, it gives people around you frenzy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when the goats baa, if you're standing too close to them, it raises your frenzy. And I was like, this is the best video game of all time. They had, like, the baa of Shabriri or whatever. And the manse itself was... I loved everything about it. Like, the aging untouchables, like, as you go there, so sick. The frenzied interrogators who were, like, out and about, so sick. The headless corpses out front with the swords of damnation sticking out of their necks, so sick. Everything was so sick about it. It was just fantastic. Last time we did this, me and you, like, gushed about Bloodborne, so this is not going to come as a surprise to anybody, but that was, like, my favorite thing. Yeah, I really, really love that. But, like the general vibe of, like, Bellerot, I hope that's how you say it. Like, just the general vibe, I loved that.
The manse was small, but it was oddly fulfilling for being so small. I think it's my favorite of the smaller dungeons, like not the big legacy dungeons, but out of the smaller ones, the Castle Morns, the Ensis castles. That's
They got
really top tier.
they got so much better at that in between the base game and the DLC with Insis and the Mance. They're just so much better than like Carry a Manor and Castle Morn and Castle Soul. Castle Soul's decent, it's fine, but I just felt like the others were like a step above all the rest. It didn't feel like there was like a red main castle, you know, where you're just like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, there's like 5 guys here and like 2 cookbooks and a like. There's way too much treasure here for the amount of resistance I'm facing.
I do wish it was a little bit bigger. Like I was enjoying my time in the Manse so much. I was like, damn, if only this had been like a full legacy done, like a bigger. Like it's not like they're not used to unrealistic proportions for. Oh, it's just a manor. People will say, you know, it doesn't have to be that big. It's just a mansion. It's like, okay, well, Cathedral of the Deep is biggest building you've ever seen. No cathedrals, right. No cathedral's ever been built that looks anything like that. It's like 100 times the size of a normal cathedral.
The Cathedral of the Deep is like to this day one of my favorite levels in a FromSoft game. And yeah, I'm right there with you. I would love to see like something with like the backstory of the Mance, but with the size of the Cathedral of the Deep. That's another one that it drives me crazy, especially all the Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 callbacks that are in Elden Ring. It drives me crazy that they have not attempted another Sin's Fortress, because like, just do that, please, for the love of God. That's the best level in a video game.
They wouldn't even be hard. They could do it. They could do a Sin's Fortress. They have the technology.
It would be so good is what gets me, because like their enemies like have better like AI or whatever, the coding, you know, like they're programmed better. Like they don't have to just be dumb snakes that stand there.
Yeah.
And then like immediately get toppled by their own traps. Like they could actually like implement some fun. They've gotten better at implementing like enemies as traps. So like enemies plus traps, like it just, they could do such a great job.
Do you remember?
If they would go back to that.
Do you remember in Dark Souls 2, there was that one invader NPC that acted like a real invader? Like
Maldron, yeah.
Yeah. And he had several different interactions. Like he would hide as a mimic thing, and then like ambush you from behind when you go to open a chest, or he would like try and lure you into the enemies and run down there so that you chased him, and then he'd gank you with them. Like that was really impressive. Like if they've got that down, they should be able to provide a real good environment plus enemy interaction.
Yeah, like God, Maldron is so good. The one where he appears and he's got the friendly phantom ring on and he's like, hey, and he does a gesture. And then he like blocks you into a doorway with a wizard. Oh my God. I'm just, okay, hang on. What were we talking about?
We were just finding things to gush about the DLC.
I would love to see them bring back like the well-designed invader enemy, but like as like a pursuer type. Like imagine, even if it was like the Mance, a place that's smaller. If there was just a psycho NPC in there with you, who was like trapping you and like leading you through all these like dangerous corridors, and like you feel like you finally got him cornered, and nope, it's another trap. He's got you. Oh, that would be so. Oh, I would love that.
What did you think of the boss in the Mance, Midra?
I loved him. I feel like Midra was like he almost could have fulfilled the role of like a tutorial boss for the DLC. Like this is where we expect you at, you know? Like you can deal with him however you want. Like you can block him, you can parry him, you can dodge him, you can great sword tank him, whatever you want. It's all viable and it all works. But you have to learn like how to pick your spots. And like that is like a recurring theme throughout the DLC's bosses. I think Rolana does like a really good job of sort of acting as like a tutorial there as well, where I love her so much. She might be like my new favorite from Software boss. But she's more like mechanically in depth, and Midra was more just sort of like, I'm gonna do some stuff, and this is just the stuff that I do. And some of it's safe to counterattack, and some of it's safe. You can just like run behind him for a lot of it, and like as long as you're behind him, he can't hit you. So like you don't even have to dodge some of his stuff if you like recognize it fast enough. And I love that. I love that we were talking last time about like the dodge roll mechanic, and there's so much stuff in this that makes it where, okay, you don't have to just dodge roll. Like there's a lot of bosses that have attacks that just flat out miss you if you get right in their face or stand slightly to their side and stuff like that. And
then there's the really deflecting tier that really helps with that playstyle.
Yeah, I actually made a video where I was like, I played one of my Colossal Sword builds, and I went and got the deflecting tier, and then I did invasions without rolls. Just to see like, okay, how good is this? Like, can I not roll anymore? And you can kind of hold your own with it, but like I'm at that level range where like I'm fighting a lot of gankers who watch YouTube videos. and that makes it like if you go up against two people who know what they're doing, or three people who are just absolutely chasing you down, like it's too much to overcome. But in a lot of situations, like especially if you weren't like streaming, like if you were just doing it for your own enjoyment and like you didn't have like to worry about like stream snipers or anything like that, you could actually get away with some kind of like, I was like over encumbered. I had like my jar cannon in my offhand and like the colossal sword in my main hand, and like it was actually like the deflecting tier in PvP in the game itself, like it's just absolute, like it's so good. I'm so glad that
I don't think I can play without it anymore. I don't think I can do anything without it anymore. Like I don't want to play most builds if I can't use my deflecting tier.
It's so good, and everybody's complaint is that like it doesn't last long enough, and I totally feel that. Like, I'm just glad we got it. Like it lasts, like there's enough grace in the game that like you could go through an entire dungeon and always have it active, because like a legacy dungeon. Like, because there's always the next grace you're going to get to. You sit down, now you've got it back for the next, 4 minutes or whatever it is.
And it'll last the whole boss fight. Like there's not a situation where a boss is going to last 5 whole minutes, and you don't die.
Yeah, that's a thing that I talk about, like when I'm talking about like the wondrous physic in invasions, is 3 minutes is longer than you think it is.
Yes.
Like there's no invasion where like, okay, this is the fight. Like you might have like the part where you're like shooting at each other from long range or whatever, but like when the fight starts, like there's no fight that lasts 3 minutes in Elden Ring. 99% of the time 3 minutes is a minute and a half more than necessary.
So you
on the topic, I'm so like, look, I know they just gave us something new, and I'm not one to complain or like this kind of drove me crazy. They gave us the ability to alter armor in the game, and everybody immediately complained and was like, I want to alter it more. And it's like, they should have never given us that.
Really?
Like, all it did was like, I get it. People are like, I want to change the color of the armor. And like, is that something you should be able to do? Yes. Especially after Armored Core? Yes. But like, they just gave it to us and we're already complaining about it. Okay, I'm sorry. I hate to be that guy.
Yeah.
They just gave us the deflection tier. I'm not complaining, I swear to God. But what about a physic where if you shoot someone with a crossbow, you can parry them.
You just want to play Bloodborne. You just want to play Bloodborne.
But imagine if I could play Sekiro and Bloodborne
at the
and
same
have
time.
both of those. Yes, with a guy who's using a colossal sword. Oh my god!
Oh, what if it's that one of those swords that have like a ranged hit, and the ranged hit you can two-hand it, you can deflect while you're two-handing, and then you do a ranged hit, and then that counts as a parry.
Yeah. Oh god. I would love it.
Do you think the deflecting tier means anything, like, for their future? Like, do you think that's indicative of them working on something that might use deflections?
Yeah. If you had asked me that, and like my only... If you had asked me that, and I was just some guy who just played these games, you know, but, like, never really, like... I mean, it's basically my career. I would probably be like, oh, they probably just wanted a cool throwback to Sekiro. But there's been these interviews where Miyazaki is like, oh, I feel like we can do even better with Sekiro and Bloodborne's. Like, he's been saying that, like I feel like we could refine Sekiro and Bloodborne's combat further. I think is like, that's not the direct quote, but it's roundabout. Mm-hmm. And then we get yes. I definitely feel like they're working on something in that vein. Yeah,
it's kind of funny. Ever since we had our podcast, ever since you planted the seed of like a fat rolling, getting rid of the fat roll, and then having some kind of shoulder tackle, I've been thinking. You know, I've just been talking about it nonstop on all of my streams, and I'm being basically like I want strength Sekiro. I just want strength Sekiro. I want Sekiro, but balanced around not Dex and the katana, but balanced around the character being a strength character somehow, and all of the focus being on that in the same way that the focus was on dodging and parrying and deflecting in Sekiro, but for strength. I
called that game, that imaginary game that I also have, I call it Sir Kiro. And instead of a grappling hook, you have like a battering ram mechanical prosthetic hand, and you have to like use it to bust down walls instead of like jump over walls. You're like busting down walls, but like maybe it can also turn into like a cannon and like a fucking Looney Tunes hammer. But yeah, same. I want that game also, the strength version of Sekiro. Oh my god. I hate even like saying this out loud, but like, if you could take, like, you know how Bloodborne didn't have like a billion weapons? It had like 20, but all of them were like, you know, well thought out. Imagine, like, we can go even lower.
Ooh.
Give me like 8 weapons to choose from, but like 8 weapons that drastically, like Monster Hunter style, change the way that you have to play the game.
Yeah, okay.
But like, okay, but it's Sekiro / Bloodborne. Like,
you're just putting everything in the pot now.
Yeah, like limit. I understand why a game like Sekiro doesn't have like a ton of quote unquote build variety, right? I get it. But I feel like there's like a nice middle ground there where like you could, like, I don't need all this. I don't need 15 long swords that all, like, 13 of them all behave the same way. They just shoot a different laser. I don't need that. Like, if you just give me 8 weapons and each one of them is like a drastically different experience, you know, I'm good to go. You know, like a stake driver and a Ludwig's Holy Blade and you got to throw in a katana. There's got to be one. But, you know, yeah, give me that. Holy God.
Yeah, no.
Let me play that for the rest of my life.
I'm with you. I am totally with you. You know, okay. How do you... You know what? Let's not talk about the future, because we're going to get back into Bloodborne copium. We spent the entirety of the last podcast just sharing the same, you know, tank of copium.
Passing the mask back and forth.
Yeah. Okay, but since we're talking about weapons, what did you think of the weapons in the DLC?
I this has been like the worst 2 weeks of my life in a long time. So I have not had as much a chance as I would like to like go in depth with everything.
Mm.
I have got to use like the light great sword, and I love it. I feel like that's what I feel like if Elden Ring had come out like a year later, that's what straight swords would have been.
Mm.
There's so like there's
I think they should be a
someone has
staple. They should not get rid of
yeah
it.
like every weapon deserves what they did to the light greatsword, where it's like it's so fluid, everything flows in and out of everything else. The recovery frames, like there's a reason to play with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because like if you just mash, that's you get that's fine, you just cycle through the animations. But if you chill while you're in your recovery frames, you can sort of like delay some stuff in interesting ways that works for both PvE and PvP. Someone told me that a lot of the new weapons are coded for like the poise damage that would have been done for weapons on 1.07 a patch, which makes sense because I believe it was confirmed somewhere, maybe not hard confirmed. I think it was Lance McDonald that said it, which is basically like a confirmation.
Yeah.
Okay, so the weapons were going to be their own separate like DLC, where they would just add these weapons into the game, and then the second DLC was going to be the new area. And then they decided, well, let's just push it all back and put it together. And so if those weapons have just been sitting there since 1.07, it makes sense. Like the light greatsword does like no poise damage at all.
Right.
Which is like at first I was like, I don't know, maybe it's not supposed to, because it hits twice on so much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like its heavy attack is as fast as its light attack almost, and like it hits twice on every heavy attack. But the more I play with it, the more I'm like, okay, no, it definitely should do more than, because it just can't challenge anything.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's problematic. Like you don't want it to, like, it's so good if you play it like passive and you just punish mistakes. But you don't want your players, especially with a weapon that fun to swing, you don't want them just standing there like, not doing anything with it. Okay, sorry. Light greatsword, absolutely love it. The backhand blades I haven't played with yet, but like they are an absolute nightmare. I don't know if you've noticed they can do a running attack and not stop running.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
Every Ash of War they have is busted.
Yes. They're so hard to do it. Yeah, the blind strike thing, that's so difficult to deal with.
Yeah, it's there are times when like my Neo brain unlocks and I can just walk behind it and backstab whoever does it, but I can't articulate to myself what is happening yet. Does that make, like, I can just see it and I get it, but like
sometimes you just do it, but you're like, oh, that's surprising.
Yeah, it's like Ultra Instinct.
Yeah.
Like the music starts playing. Okay. All the I'm so mad. I'm so mad at Dark Souls 2 players. I'm not mad at Dark Souls 2, but I'm so mad at Dark Souls 2 players.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, I blame everyone who enjoys Dark Souls 2 for, oh, there needs to be more int faith weapons. There needs to be more int faith weapons. And also power stance was so cool. There needs to be more power stance. When I saw Rolana's weapon, like, I was like, this is the perfect weapon. I thought it was like the Carrion straight sword with Moonveil lasers.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then they attached it to some other sword that has a faith requirement that shoots fire. And I was like, I was so mad. I was trying to find some way to like, okay, what if I don't match the faith requirements? Can I still do? No, you can't. You can't shoot the lasers if you don't have the faith requirements. I was like so mad. And then, and this is why I'm mad before the Dark Souls 2 people. I've given them enough time to start typing their comment. Go ahead, comment, like, and subscribe. The reason I'm mad at them is because after I go on streams and I see people saying, "Oh, Int Faith stuff didn't get enough in this DLC." It's like, you won't be satisfied until they just give you that stupid weapon infusion back, and then that'll be the only infusion anyone plays with, and then you'll all gripe about build variety. I know this game.
They're not even using Rolana's sword.
I know!
They just ruined it for everyone else.
Exactly! It could have been perfect for me. Like, if that had just been 2 separate swords,
yeah,
I would have had every sword I needed for like 50% of all my builds that use straight swords and straight sword adjacent swords.
Oh, you don't even know. You don't even know. I also was desperate to make it work because I think the light greatsword is probably my favorite weapon class, but I like carrying stuff. I like yes, carrying swords, and I like them specifically when they have the glintstone in it. You know, I tried to convince myself that Milady was a carrying sword. Oh, you find it in Ensis. Oh, it's it's basically a carrying sword. Look, carrions are elegant. That's why it moves that way. But no, it's not really a carrying sword. It doesn't have a glintstone in it. And so Rolana's sword is it's perfect.
Yep.
But no, no, it's attached to this other thing. It's very difficult to make it work, and it's just weaker than any alternative that I could be using.
Yeah,
don't like it.
I will say though that like if you go sword and shield with Rolana's or Renala,
Mm-hmm.
which one? Which one are we talking about? Rolana. Okay, if you go sword and shield, it puts the fire sword on your back.
Yes,
which is like, that was something that they showed off in Dark Souls 3, leaked before the game was even announced. The game, there was like images of the game leaked online, and that was one of the things that we saw, was like a guy with a sword and a shield, and he had a bastard sword on his back, and everybody was like, "This is so hype! We can finally have cool." No, and it never happened until now. We just now got it, but I have to remind everybody. All the time when I'm streaming, I have to remind people, like, people are like, "Oh, we saw this a million years ago. It's still not been put in any of the games. It's not been implemented." The skeletons in Demon Souls had the Onikiri Ubadachi moveset, and like, we as the players didn't get access to that until they even had the weapon art, the jump knee double slash thing. We didn't get that until Dark Souls 3. So like, maybe one day, you know, maybe next game.
You're right. That is the jump attack. I died to it a lot.
Farming that blade stone.
Yep. I think at one point, like, Demon Souls was the first one that I played. I started like trading people for Bladestone because it's like, do you have it? Like, I'd invade people and I'd see that use a katana. And it's like, hey, you get any Bladestone? I really need it.
That's. You think you're getting hate mail from the guy you just fought, and they're just like, "Hey, do you got any Bladestone?
You got any Bladestone, please? I'm desperate." Never even seen one.
You know what was messed up about the remake? I don't know how true this is, but somebody told me this, and I instantly believed it because it was funny. Since they upped the drop rate on pure Bladestone, it made it where the Bladestone chunks were now as hard to farm as the pure Bladestone used to be, because everything that dropped the chunks now had a higher like drop rate of Bladestone.
I see.
Of pure Bladestone. I thought that was, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I like to believe it is because it's funny.
I'll take anything that makes criticism for the remake. I didn't like it.
I saw that your video. I think it's too risky to try and remake one of those games without like direct input from the studio itself. Like, I have no ill will or whatever towards Blue Point.
Mm-hmm.
I watched some interviews with like the guy that was in charge of that project, and he seemed to genuinely love Demon Souls. But the entirety of like the community is based around this idea of like everyone's interpretation and how everyone's interpretation of stuff is different. And so to try and like pin down like a concrete form for this thing that everyone experienced and saw differently, like it's just, you're just never in a million years ever. Like there was I try not to nitpick or whatever, but like when the Flame Lurker thing came out and everybody was throwing a fit about how Flame Lurker looked different, there was one like detail that always stuck out to me, was that like the Flame Lurker looks like he's wearing a crown, but it's like it's a human skull where his like he has grown too big for his own bones, and he's like coming out of his skull, and it looks like a crown because of like the way his skull has opened up. And it's so grotesque, and it's such like cool visual storytelling, and it's something that they just like, oh, he's got like bones on his head, you know, like you kind of like miss the, you know, and I get how you could, it's such a small little detail, but it's that small little detail that somebody could make a lore video about, that, you know, literally 1 million people watch and are like, oh, that's so cool, and now you've missed it in your remake. And so like, you know, like people like I don't want to nitpick, but like I understand why people do, and I just, it's so like, it's, that's a cursed project to have to try and take on, to try and like remake Demon Souls. God forbid. Could you imagine somebody trying to remake Bloodborne?
Yeah, how would you feel about them? Like, there's been rumors swirling around that they would be the ones to remake Bloodborne if there was going to be a Bloodborne remake.
In all honesty, I know people memed about the Q-Lock remaster of Dark Souls 1, but like, just do that. Like, the thing that people don't understand about the Q-Lock Dark Souls 1 remaster is like, that game fundamentally does not work on PlayStation or Xbox. It's so hard. Like, the netcode was so bad that that game just fundamentally doesn't work. And like, go now, I challenge you, go to Q-Lock's Wikipedia page and look at the games that they have remastered. They're all multiplayer games, and they all focus on like improving the multiplayer. If you play Dark Souls 1 on PC, then I totally understand how you're like, this is a non-issue for me. We have mods that fix this. Cool, I get it. And they also should not have delisted Prepare to Die edition. Totally, until that thing was discovered. The
yeah, that was weird.
Thing.
That was weird. That was a weird thing. Like, we heard about that one time and then it disappeared. It's, I almost feel like it's like not true, and it was like a panic. Like, I talked about it. I reported it, and it seemed legit. But we never heard anything about that again, and so it's just like, go ahead.
They I don't know if you remember this. They took all the games offline for a minute.
Yeah, I know.
It was a legitimate thing. It was a real thing. But you were right to feel, you know, like something was fishy there, because it absolutely was. The exploit was discovered by people, who were like, to their credit, were trying to get a hold of someone to be like, hey, this exploit exists. And apparently, I don't know how true any of this is, but apparently they tried to get in touch with someone at Bandai Namco or to be like, hey, this exploit exists, and no one answered them. And so then they staged an example of it,
right,
and they passed it off as real. Just so someone would finally, I cannot, but that's like, I can't verify how factual any of this is, but that's what happened as far as we know,
right?
You know,
and it must have had some legitimacy. Otherwise, they just say that's not the fact
the fact that some of the games couldn't come back online for that reason. I forget which ones was it. I think Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition and maybe Dark Souls 2's like the OG servers.
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah, like so there was obviously something to it, but yeah, the way that it was presented to everyone definitely made it seem like you know, like wait, that was all like that was literally like a presentation basically,
Right.
for show to get people to pay attention to this thing. Now, I don't know how hard they tried. There have been exploits and bugs that I have, and not even me as like Saint Riot, a guy who does these videos, but like just a guy. I like emailed Bandai and I'm like, hey, there's a thing that happens if you do this, this, and this, and it makes this happen, and it's obviously unintended, and they have fixed it. A buddy of mine who is like a mathematician in real life, and a Bloodborne, he calls himself a challenged runner. He made a graph of armor, poise values, and defense breakpoints, and basically it was an entire graph that was just to show From Software how bad the Tree Sentinel armor was at doing anything, like how pointless it was. He sent them the graph, and that like the Tree Sentinel armor is like the try-hard armor now because of the changes they made to all of the armors after like patch 1.08 or something, you know, 7 or 6, somewhere around there.
That's actually really nice that you know, we know that they're listening, and you have material evidence of them changing things based on information that you know they have.
Yeah, like they're not like if you email Bandai, like they'll email you back. Like they're like, "Oh, okay." Or like, "Can you explain this more? Can you like if you submit a bug report, if as long as you don't sound like an idiot, I guess, like they'll get back in touch with you and like, hey, you know, if they have other questions like you know, can you explain the steps between 2 and 3 that make 4 happen?" Things like that. Like it used to be, you remember this, I'm sure. Like, do you remember one of my dogs is growling at me for some reason? Stop growling at me, psycho. Sorry. Do you remember Dark Souls 3? Bandai Namco finally hired a guy to be like a community manager.
Kind of.
I can't remember his name, but he would hang out on Reddit, and he would like, you could like just talk to him. When this happened, everybody was like, "Holy crap! Like, this is, we actually can like talk to this person." He added Ornstein's plume to his helmet in Dark Souls 3. That was one of the major things that happened. I can't remember that guy's name, but man, yeah. Anyway, after that point, he's gone. But like, Bandai Namco, after that, like, it has just become so much easier to actually like communicate with a person about these games and get someone to like pay attention to you, which is nice because there's a lot of stuff that like community feedback, like, in my opinion, they should ignore, and they're right to ignore it.
Yeah.
But there's some stuff that's like, I shouldn't be able to death blight people with carrion retaliation.
Right.
That's a problem that you have. Here's why it's happening. Would you please fix this? Thank you.
Okay, let me try and drag us back to the DLC. Bosses. Which one was your favorite? Which boss did you like the most?
It's Rolana.
Yeah.
Rennala?
Yeah.
Rolana.
Rolana.
Oh, I love her. I love her so much. When I my buddy Stochastic, the challenge runner guy, I used to invade him in Bloodborne, and he would be in New Game Plus 7 in Bergenworth. and he would summon Damien of Mensis. New game +7 Damien of Mensis is a nightmare. And there's a bug in Bloodborne where in multiplayer, the old hunters, their projectiles fire twice. So when he does Black Sky Eye, it shoots 2 instead of 1. And it's like new game +7 arcane damage against like a level 43 invader. So like you're just getting one tapped by Damien of Mensis Black Sky Eye. And that was like kind of his deal, was like he was like, you know, he's this guy who does these insane challenge runs and then basically just, you know, like he'll summon strangers into a new game +7 world at level 30 and just let them get destroyed by you know, base game starting enemies but you know, they're new game +7 and the people that he's summoning don't know that.
Right.
Just doing goofy stuff. He got me into like trying challenge runs, and bosses that I used to hate, I loved now. And bosses that I used to love, I was like, you kind of peek behind the curtain and you're like, oh, this is kind of garbage. All right, Lady Maria is kind of garbage. The way her fire works on her weapon, like that little plume of fire that comes off, it's essentially just there to do some extra damage to limit the amount of rally that you have. But if you're below level 20, you haven't leveled up any of your flat defense yet, and so it will just kill you. And it's just such a garbage. It's just such a cheap way to hurt the player. It's obvious. It's designed for people who are over level 100, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, you kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit, and you're like, oh, and you kind of like it kind of like, okay, Rolana is that without all the garbage. She's perfect. She's beautiful in every way, everything, and she's so good. I made a video right when Elden Ring came out, and it was like, enemies do read your inputs, but what you think is input reading is like a positional based decision making pathway. This dog. I'm sorry. Hang on one second. I'm gonna put her downstairs. Ah, okay. Now I'm back. Now it's working. Do you want to circle back around to that question, or should I just jump back in?
No, you can just go ahead and jump back in. What was it? We were talking about Rolana.
Love her. I love Rolana. I made a video like when Elden Ring first came out. Like, I just was using the Crucible Knight in the Everjail. People were like, "Oh, it's input reading," and it's like, yeah, kind of, but it's just making decisions based on where you're standing, and you can watch that play out like in real time. It has like a stomp attack that it follows up with a slash, and then if you're too far away, it doesn't do anything else. But if you're close, he does like a follow-up slash. It's like they just have decision making, and she is that perfected. Where you're standing, what you're doing, all determines, and like the recovery between her swings is like all the time it takes for her to make the decision on which attack is going to work best right now.
Yeah.
And like everything she does is fluid and perfect and counterable. And
so you're basically saying all the complaints people have they're just wrong. They're wrong about Rolana.
I have not. I've seen a million people complain about Radon, but right. I have not seen many people complain about her. If they are complaining about her,
well, I think she's under the generalized complaints where, you know, the combo strings are too long. She takes forever to stop her attacks.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's like people. It's so like. They see an enemy have like a 5-second windup, and they're like, their windups are so slow. Hit them.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you.
Hit them. Just hit them.
Yeah.
That's what, you know.
That's
like,
the opening. That's your opening right there.
Yeah. Like, it's not meant to be like everybody has like this Dark Souls 1 brain.
They want it to be
like,
complete. They want the boss to be completely at neutral. They want the boss to be completely not moving, and that's like, oh, that's indicative that I can go and attack them. But it's actually not anymore. Like, that's not indicative that you can, because they might be able to hit you from neutral a lot of the times. And okay, I agree with you about the input reading thing, but it's like, well, what are they supposed? They don't have eyes. What are they supposed to do? So it's not. You're right. It's not input reading. They're making decisions based on what you're doing, based on where you're standing, based on whether you're attacking or not. You know, based on a lot of things. They don't have eyes. They have to. Yeah. They have to make decisions as to what they're going to do based on what they based on what you're doing. Without actual,
like that,
yeah.
That was the thing that drove me crazy. It was like the one instance where they will input read is when you use an item, and the item that you're probably using is a flask, and so they're going to punish that. But if you will learn the boss, what's beautiful about these bosses is you never have to drink a flask in neutral. There's always a time to drink a flask.
Right.
It's just part of the fight is finding it.
You have to forego the opening that you would have used to attack and use that opening for a flask. Don't do it from neutral. If I'm playing in PvP and I think they're about to go for a flask, I charge at them. You know, I try and punish the flask.
Yes. Like, yeah, that's like in Dark Souls 3 and in Elden Ring, like, and Bloodborne, like PvP, like, hell, in Dark Souls 1, like, that's where your real damage happens, is like the flask punish, the heal punish. Mm-hmm. With Elden Ring, I will say it's so fast, especially against Radahn. Like, you have to make the roll and be chugging out of the roll. Like, you have no extra time. Everything is like so, like, I know people are really mad at Radahn.
Yeah, let me ask you what do you think about Radahn? Like, I guess it's like traditional at this point, but what is your Radahn thoughts?
He's so hard, but he should be, he deserves to be, and he's good. There are aspects of that fight that I still have not completely wrapped my head around. But his phase 2 is entirely just psychological warfare, which makes sense because that's Miquella's whole thing. And so the fact that like all those teleports that he does, they don't do any real damage. They just scare you. They're just there to scare you. And
it works. I get terrified.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but also, like, every mistake that you make so, like, let's say you dodge a hit in phase 2, and you dodge the hit, but then you get hit by the aftershock of, like, the holy explosion. Mm-hmm. If you learn how to roll that in phase 2 so that you don't get hit by it, mm-hmm. and then you go back and you try phase 1 again, you will learn that phase 2 just taught you a better way to dodge phase 1. Mm. And so as you get better at phase 2, you're getting better at phase 1. There's very little in phase 2 that isn't accounted for in phase 1. All the openings are the same. All the big openings are the same. The meteor psycho crusher dive he does. The lion's claw. He has a new opening now with the grab attack. The Miquella mind control attack is a new opening.
Yep.
That you can punish or heal during. His Zangetsu Naruto teleport that he does, like, that's easily avoidable and gives you a chance to heal. But if he goes for an attack, you dodge it, and then the explosion gets you at the end. It's basically saying, like, hey,
dodge
stand
somewhere
over
else.
Here.
Yeah, dodge to a different place.
If you had been standing over here, you could have punished that and not gotten hit. And so, like, if you are willing to learn from phase 2, it makes phase 1 easier. And when you get through phase 1 easier, and it doesn't, the only thing that's absolute bullshit about Radon is like any attack that starts with his left hand, especially that slice scissor chop. That is, and I saw Scott Junn's video, and I heard Peeve talk about like that all used to be like on the press copy of the game. That was all a true combo. So like if you got hit by it, and it's so easy to get hit by it, it all comboed together. And like in phase 2, it was just a one shot, even if you had 60 vigor.
I heard from a lot of different people that was just like, it was ridiculous. There's like, how do they expect people to beat this?
Yeah. That move, it's still ridiculous, but it's not that bad. What got me is like, I just parried the shit out of him.
That was
how I beat him.
That's what I did. Yeah.
And it felt good, didn't it?
It did.
I loved it. I was like, okay, I see what we're doing. Hell yeah, let's go. We'll Sekiro this dude, and I had a great time with it. But I want to try him with the deflect tier. I still haven't got to try him with the deflect tier yet.
He's fun. He's fun with it.
Gosh, man. And this is another thing that I think a lot of people are complaining about that they don't understand. There has been some misinformation that the DLC is unaffected by New Game Plus. Have you seen people say this?
No,
it's all over the internet. People are convinced that your level doesn't matter and that your New Game Plus cycle doesn't matter. And they think that the Scadu Tree blessings are like the only thing that matters. And it's the more casual audience, but like I see it a lot, and I'm like, who told you people this? And like, why would you believe it? But I think I
saw one
most
particular
of the complaints.
I saw one particular review by Arlo, and he's a Nintendo guy. He doesn't really, he played Elden Ring and he got to New Game Plus 7, so he likes Elden Ring, but he's not. He's self-admittedly not great at it. And so he goes into the DLC with his New Game Plus 7 character. And much of his review was like, this is too much. Like I like Elden Ring, I like all that stuff, but this is so much. And he was doing it during the review period, so he was with the much harder version of the game than what we got on release. And I'm just like, why did you go into New Game Plus 7? If you self-admittedly, you're putting yourself where you got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
When you play Elden Ring or any of these Souls games, you have an avenue to make the game easier on yourself with upgrades and levels and more HP and more damage, whatever it is. But at New Game Plus 7, that matters a lot less, than it does in New Game.
Yeah.
So like you've just taken that avenue away from yourself, and like, okay, now let's make the game as hard as it possibly can.
This is a thing that I did Sekiro New Game Plus 7, plus 8. I think I got up to like plus 14. It doesn't matter at a certain point, but like with Elden Ring and Dark Souls, it's like I just make a new character. I just start a new build. Right. So like, okay, what would happen if I did it this way? I did a long sword. Now let's do a great sword. Okay, now let's do the colossal sword.
Mm-hmm. I almost never go to New Game Plus on Elden Ring.
It depends on how, like, so for me, I'm making builds that I'm going to do PvP with, and so like, okay, like level 80 with like plus 16 weapons, like that's a good range.
Yes.
All right, I can get that. I can get that before I get to Malekith, which is nice because it allows me to not ash the capital. So that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to go to 125 or 138 or 139, whatever it is, I'll just beat the game. If I'm going to go to level 200, I need to go to New Game Plus. Maybe New Game Plus 2. But that's typically like as far as I go on any playthrough. So seeing people do like first playthrough, Shadow of the Erdtree, New Game Plus 7. What is wrong with you? Why? Like my first playthrough of the Old Hunters was in like New Game Plus 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is a nightmare. This is like legitimately a nightmare. I stopped leveling up because I was like, well, if you keep leveling up, you kind of like there's no like you're going into New Game Plus. It's supposed to be harder. New Game Plus is always a victory lap. New Game Plus 2 is where like stuff like, okay, Gascoigne is going to put up a fight again in New Game Plus 2. So like fighting, Ludwig and Maria and Orphan and Lawrence in New Game Plus 2 for the first time at like level 120 or whatever I was.
Yeah.
I was like, God, why did I do this? And so from that point on, I was like, yeah, if my first playthrough of the DLC is not going to be in New Game Plus 3 or anything crazy, it might be New Game Plus or maybe even New Game Plus 2, but like if it's New Game Plus 2, I'm going to be level 200. So like, that's way higher level than I would typically take a build.
This is a good opportunity, actually. What do you think is the best invasion level for the DLC?
Like honest to God, when people would ask me, like in Dark Souls 3, they're like, hey, what level, like if I wanted to start invading, what level should I be? And I would be like, try like, be level 60 and have, back when Dark Souls 3 first came out, level 60's like normal upgrade was like +8 because +8 weapons went all the way down to +5. And so you could be 60 +8 and give yourself like this, just this sliver of an advantage over other level 60. And then like the 4th or 5th patch, they made it where they were like, okay, +8 only goes down to +6 now. So it became 60 +6 or 60 +7. I would tell people like, yeah, go start there. With Elden Ring and in the DLC as well, just go to meta level. Go to meta level. Because like 125, if you want your build to like have honorable duels in the arena, then you should stick at 125. If you don't give a shit about that, then go to 138 or 139, whatever it is. But the reason being is that if you try and learn invasions at level 60, you're going to invade some guy who has summoned his level 400 buddy. and the way that downscaling works between level 60 and like level 80, it's functionally worthless. I would say like 50 to 80. It's functionally worthless. Downscaling does nothing to help you as the invader in that instance. Like, so what's going to happen is you're going to have a +12 weapon at level 60, and you're going to hit this guy who's level like 700, and it's not going to do any damage to him, and he's going to bleed you out in one hit, or he's going to frostbite you in one hit, or frenzy you in one hit, and you can't do any damage to him. But if you're level 139 or 125 or whatever, 150, anything in between there, even if he's level 400, you're at least still hitting him with a fully maxed out weapon. And that will do damage. Like, people get like so caught up on like the stats that I don't think they understand that like for a long period of time, the majority of your damage is coming from your weapon upgrade. That matters more than anything else for a larger amount of time. Like up until you hit like +18, it doesn't really matter where your stats are. You could just have base stats to wield something, and if you've got it leveled up right, it's going to do damage. So, once you get to a point where now you have levels to spare, okay, cool, put them where they go. But if you hit anybody with a +25 weapon, it's going to do damage. It's going to hurt them. And so, like, if you're trying to learn invasions, it's nice that you can do damage to those people who are, like, over-leveled, as opposed to feeling like you're just swinging a wet noodle at the over-leveled, password-summoned phantoms. And I think that level range for the DLC is still, like, kind of the go-to. I think most people are probably going to be somewhere between 125 and 200. And so if you aim for like 139 or like 168 or whatever, where that way you're going you know, you're invading down to 150 but up to 200.
Yeah.
Somewhere between there, 139 and 160. I think like you're going to get the majority. I'll tell you, I ran one of my level 80 builds through the DLC to get all the new madness stuff, and I tried to invade, and there is literally no one in the DLC at level 80 at all.
Right.
And there probably won't be for a while.
Yeah, even if there is, I don't think that like those are the type you want to invade, because like ideally you want to invade people that are going in as a group and they're just trying to get through the level. Maybe it's their first time going through it, or they're helping their buddy with it. You want to get people that are trying to go through the level, and like my rationale is like 166 is what I thought was ideal, because first of all, there's plenty of people still. Maybe it's a consequence of there being a lot of people there, but right now there's a lot of people to invade at 166. And my reasoning was, I don't necessarily want the meta level people at 125, because if they're meta level, they're there for a reason. They're duelists. They want to be able to go through the DLC and stay at the meta level so they can duel. I don't like pairing with duelists. I don't like taunters tonguing people that are sitting there and just waiting for you, or ambushing you, or even if they're being, you know, fair, they just want to be able to duel and not be in the arena. And I'm like, just go to the arena. For the love of God, go to the arena. Leave me alone. I'm trying to go ahead.
No, yeah, 100% I'm with you. Like the Taunter's Tongue is like the worst implemented. Everything, like it does nothing for anyone who wants it to do what, like, invaders want it to be this thing where it's like, okay, you turned it on, you can't turn it off. Like, even if you kill me, I'm coming right back, and if I manage to kill one of your phantoms, I'm going to get a second invader to come in here and help me. I would love that.
Yeah.
I miss the Dark Souls 3 Dried Finger, where it was like, I would fight a group from the start of the Cathedral of the Deep to the end of the Cathedral of the Deep. I miss that so much.
Jesus.
And like, and when you get a good co-invader with you,
finally, like, you can finally challenge the group. Yeah. Yeah,
that's like the invader version of like Solaire is like,
yes.
You're like, oh, finally, Buttfucker 69. Yeah, I love this guy. And he comes in naked with 2 dark hands, and like, you just don't have that with Elden Ring, which is a shame. And I know that there are hosts who wish it worked that way because they play it that way. But the vast majority of people play it as like, Taunter's Tongue on, here comes an invader, Taunter's Tongue off. Me and my buddy are going to gank you now.
Yeah.
And like, that's so annoying. And then alternatively, I know that there are people who miss getting invaded solo as they honestly and earnestly explored an area.
Yes.
They can't have that either.
Yeah, that's me.
Because the Taunters...
That's me. I want that. Give it back to me.
The Taunter's Tongue isn't doing it for you because you're like... With the Dried Finger, it was like, I might get invaded. With the Taunter's Tongue, it's like, I am being invaded as soon as I use this.
Yes.
Like, there's no probability that I might get invaded at the worst possible time. What's going to happen is I'm going to use this item and immediately get invaded.
Yeah.
And so, like...
And then even if I kill the guy, I'm going to get invaded right afterwards. That's another thing that I liked about the normal invasions. It was a surprise. You know, you didn't know when it was going to happen. Like, you just wandered out into the world. You were honestly going through the levels, and then, oh, you're invaded. And then you kill the guy, and then you go through the cooldown. And then, you know, when it happens again, it's a surprise. It's not like a constant stream of phantoms that, and at that point, you're not even engaging with the level. You're just challenge rushing to... challenge fighting your way to the boss.
Yeah, the idea that I like, as someone who like, I had my little try hard phase during Dark Souls 3, and it was like, by the end of Dark Souls 3, I was just like, okay, what's the coolest thing I can do? Like, I want to win, but if I don't win doing the coolest thing, then it just kind of feels like meh, whatever, right? So for a person like me, when I invade a solo host who is like, I have run into, like, out of of all the thousands of invasions, I've probably had 10 solo hosts who were like actively trying to explore an area with a taunter's tongue on.
Yeah.
And every time it's just like I show up, they see me, and they're like, "Oh shit!"
And they cease to try and progress the level. They completely stop.
Well, the majority of the time, they just die instantly,
right?
Through no fault of mine.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just like, okay, so I'm going to give you the invader's perspective on this, and this is just for people who think like me, but there's a bunch of us out there, I promise. We hit the finger. We sit there for a second. Invading another world. Cool. Loading screen. All right. Spawn in. Oh, I see the host. Host has died. Loading screen.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm back in. It's like, so a thing that I see people is they're like, I wish rune arcs worked like embers. And I'm like, I don't miss that at all. Like, after Elden Ring came out, I went back and I tried to invade in Dark Souls Remastered for like, I don't even remember what I was doing, but I was just like, I'm going to do this for a weekend or something, I guess. I don't know. And, I wanted footage for video. I invaded 10 times right in front of Anor Londo at like Anor Londo level. So I was like level 40, 50, something like that. And 8 of my 10 invasions ended in disconnects the moment I got into the world. One ended in a disconnect the moment I showed up and I actually saw the host. They disconnected, and then one was an actual invasion. And I was like, "Oh right, disconnects." I had forgot about this. Like, Elden Ring is like, you'll disconnect on an invader because you don't give a shit about them. Like, there's some guy who opposes you, and so you will step outside the rules of the game and turn the game off. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll just knock the chessboard over and be like, nope, not doing that. You don't care because, like, they're opposed to you. But you're less likely to do that if you have your buddy with you.
Right.
And, like, that's how they fixed disconnects. Everybody always complained, like, oh, they should do something to fix disconnects. And then they fixed it by being like, okay, you don't get invaded unless you're with somebody. And for a person like me, it's like, this is perfect. This is the perfect system.
Okay, I gotta say, this is something that I've been thinking about in the last month. I've changed my mind, having mulled it over. I have always been the guy, it's like, oh, bring back solo host invasions. I miss solo host invasions, but I wasn't thinking about it right. Because I was thinking about it from the host perspective, as the host. It's like, I want to engage with the invasion system while I solo go through the game, because I'm not going to use a co-op partner, and I'm definitely not going to use a co-op partner the first time I do it. I probably won't use it most of the times that I do it. I just don't like it. And so that completely cuts off invasions for me, and that's not good. But then I started thinking about it. Wait a minute. Do I want to invade solo hosts? And the answer that I came to is no. No, because even in the most optimal situation, where it's a good host, he's going through the level, he's honestly engaging with the level, and is good enough to deal with the enemies and me coming at him. Even in that situation, I'd rather just fight a group. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, first of all, I have a lot of experience invading. Like, I'm not the best, but I'm experienced. So I'm at least as good as experience can get you. And so the guy has to be better than me and the enemies and whatever bullshit that I've brought with me into, whatever build that I brought with me to deal with it, because I'm prepared. I'm in the invader, and he's caught by surprise. And it's not reasonable to expect a solo host to be that good. Even if he could take me in a duel, can he take me and 3 NPC things in a duel? No, I don't think he can. So it's just not as interesting. It's much more my speed. It's much more interesting when he's got 2 or 3 guys with him and they're going through the level, and I use the level to my advantage. And then because they have more people, they have the courage to push forward. When they're by themselves, they will tend to be like, well, now I can't push forward. There's too many. I can't deal with him and the enemies. But if there's yeah, go ahead.
Well, you as the invader, you are rewarded also for your knowledge of the level. Mm-hmm. And so like you're like, like you mentioned earlier, you like it when maybe they're going through for the first time. Like, there's that one guy that's maybe off in the corner. That banished knight from hell in Castle Sol. Like, so many people don't even know that he exists, but I do. And so, like, if you're chasing me with your 4 buddies and you're like, we got your ass now, and I can even just get you kind of close to him, he'll probably teleport over here, you know? And so, like, I'm rewarded for knowing that. And that's like that feedback loop that you want in a game, where, like, I'm rewarded for understanding mechanics and hit stun and latency and yada yada, but also, like, just for knowing there's a guy over here who's kind of a badass. And those moments where the banished knight shows up and just wipes everybody out, and, like, you know, they were whipping your ass up until that moment, but then the banished knight shows up and you're like, they didn't know about that. Like, that, everything about that feels good. Like, as opposed to, like, all right, I show up and there's a guy and it's a solo host and he's just standing there with, like, a great sword and a wrought rapier in his offhand, and he's just, you know, waiting. Or alternatively, you, the solo host, who's like, man, let's assume you had that, where you, you know, you have, like, the dream scenario where, like, you could still be invaded without knowing you're going to be invaded. Like, your invader shows up and is probably, like, running, you know, if you're, like, level 30, your invader shows up throwing rot pots.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
hefty
always
rot pots.
now there's now there's big ones. So, like, it's like there's this constant arms race, which I have, like, checked myself out of. Like, I went back and did some Bloodborne invasions, and I have, like, my stream has grown exponentially since, like, the last time I did Bloodborne invasions. And I was doing some Bloodborne invasions on stream, and, like, I'm using, like, these weapons that are, like, I call them good enough, where it's like I have decent gems in the weapons, but, like, I didn't go all out. And then I have, when I invade somebody and they have, like, the massively overleveled phantom who can kill me in 2 hits, I have, like, the doomsday weapon that I can swap to, where it's like, you know, okay, no, there's 32 blunts in this here Ludwig's, and I'm going to kill you in 1 hit. Like, and seeing Elden Ring people see an invader have that level of, like, advantage over hosts is hilarious, because, like, they're like, Jesus, that's disgusting. And it's like, oh, I know. It used to, you know, like, this was, imagine Dark Souls 2, where, like, imagine if you've got, like, you know, 100,000 soul memory to you is like, oh, I've fought and died so hard. But, like, to some invader who knows the game, it's like, and has been wearing the agape ring, like, oh yeah, all my weapons are maxed out, my armor's maxed out, like, I'm leveled better than you. Like, maybe you've only got, you know, 50 levels. Maybe I got 150 levels, and it doesn't matter because we have the same soul memory. Like, or, like, in Dark Souls 1, showing up with, like, Dark Bead or Black Flame in the Undead Burg.
And you could upgrade your armor, like, back then, too.
Yeah. Oh, and 99 soft humanity?
Yep.
Like, you can't kill me. I'm immortal. Like, yeah. Like, the level of neutered that invaders have become is something that people gripe about. And I go back and I watch, like, old Dark Souls 2 videos that I liked, or, you know, and I'll see somebody just, like, some guys climbing a ladder, and somebody runs up behind him and casts Climax and just one-shots him. And everybody's like, yeah, got his ass. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I mean, I guess, but, like, that would get old for me so fast that, like,
see,
the
thing is, like, the invading experience. Okay, you know, this is a good segue. I'll give my spiel in a minute, I guess. But let me ask you this before I rant about that. What do you think to the people that are, like, completely anti-invasions? Like, what do you say to anti-invasion people? They'll see scenarios like you were just describing, where people will abuse the systems in ways that they obviously weren't meant to be used. They'll go into the DLC and get the hefty pots, and then go to Stormvale at level 20 and throw, you know, one shot at anybody that they can get a hefty pot with, or a rot pot, or you know, twink weapons, or they'll just use mods, you know, whatever that they do. And then they're like, well, I hate invaders. Why are you coming into my game? Why are you? What joy do you get from grieving me? Like, what do you say to the completely anti-invasion people? Why do you do it?
It's it's just fun. I think that there is, for sure. I would also like to preface this by saying that in Elden Ring, anti-invader sentiment is like way down, as opposed to Dark Souls 3, where it was like rampant. I seriously felt like I was the only person on the internet who was like, invading is fun and cool. Like, and actively trying to like have a conversation about it. It is way toned down in Elden Ring, and I think that that's because of the co-op thing.
I agree.
All right, but what would I say? Like, it's just fun. It's just fun. I think people get real upset about dying to another player. They get more upset about that than they are to like dying to a mob. But like, there is fundamentally no difference at all. As someone who spends more time invading in these games than like anyone else in the world, if I show up in your game and I kill you in some silly, funny way, I don't like sit back and be like, I'm so badass, you know? Like, I am not like, there's no, it's just fun. Is you wouldn't get mad at Monopoly for telling you to go to jail, you know? Like, so don't get mad at Elden Ring for like throwing an invader at you. It's just like the uh-oh, here comes the bad thing, you know, here comes the consequence to your having summoned somebody. A lot of people are like, well, if you don't like invaders, play offline, you know, and it's like, they don't, the popularity of that seamless co-op mod, you know, like, people want to play with their buddies, and like, it's just, the invader who's playing against you is like not anti you. We're, you know, like, we're, for the most part, I know there's some assholes out there, and I won't act like there's not, but like, if you come to like one of my streams, you're gonna see like myself and like 90% of everyone in chat is like, haha, this is just some fun we're having, we're just goofing, it's not, no one is mad at you for playing the game with your buddies and we invade you. And like, I'll shit talk, you know, but to me it's like, it's trash talk. It's like being on a basketball court. You know what I mean? Like, it's not anything personal or like serious. I don't like, I'm just trying to be entertaining. But like, it's not like serious maliciousness or whatever. I just think people have like this idea in their head on both sides. I think invaders see co-opers as like, you know, these Reddit tier virgins who, you know, have to play with their buddies or whatever. And then on the other side of that, you have the co-opers who see the invaders as these basement dwelling mutants who just want to spoil their fun. We're all playing the same game, you know? It's just, I couldn't exist without co-opers. Like, I love co-opers. I'm gonna shit talk them, but I love them. I think they're great, and I hope that they keep playing the game because I want to keep invading. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, like, I hope that even if I kill you, I hope that I at least, like, give you something that is, like, memorable, so that
right.
You and your buddy, or maybe you kill me. Maybe you kill me in a way that you think is fun and memorable. And it's like, it's something that you guys record on your PlayStation, and like, you know, it's just a cool little thing that you guys can have. It's such a unique game mechanic that like, there's just no way you can be mad at it.
I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that you're not really supposed to win in invasions. Like, it's not, you get limitations and restrictions placed on you as an invader, and I think specifically because you're a balancing force for the co-op. And I don't think that you're really supposed to win all the time, which is one of the reasons why I don't get upset if, you know, I get stuck in a corner and I get blendered to death by people, because, you know, they had fun doing it, and I have fun when I manage to win. I think that you're it's good when the host kills you. Like, let's say that we got one of those nice scenarios where we're going through the whole level and we start at the beginning and we've managed to stay alive all the way to the end, harassing them, and they've proceeded through the level. The resources are getting drained. You know, I haven't been able to kill them, but I'm getting close. I've gotten a couple good tries, and they haven't managed to kill me. But I'm running out of enemies. Like, we're almost to the end of the level here. And then let's say they get me, and they feel that moment of triumph, and they get some of their S's back because they got me, and they get all happy, and the whole thing is memorable, and they go on a forum and talk about it, or they record it and they're like, oh yeah, or they're talking among themselves on Discord and they're just feeling a moment of happiness. That's good, and I think that's what's supposed to happen a lot of the times. I invade, honestly, because I don't really feel like I have a choice. Where else does this game mechanic exist? You know, if it existed somewhere else, yes, I would go and play it somewhere else, but it doesn't exist. I don't have a choice. It's like saying, well, stop playing this game that you love. I can't. It's only here.
I used to be a liar, and I said the same thing that you just said. And then, like, Wolong and what is the other one? Lords of the Fallen. These other games came out that tried to implement it, and I haven't bothered even trying in their games. A lot of that is due to the fact that, like, I was like, oh, they have invasions in those games now? And then I check and see, like, are they any good? And everybody's like, oh, it's broken and terrible and it doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, not even going to try. But yeah,